After searching high and low for a job, James Danver finally found an opening as a security guard for the Sunrise Psychiatric Institution. While it wasn't the job he was hoping for, he desperately needed the money for his firstborn daughter. On his first day in the asylum, he met David, a man who looks young on the outside, but he clearly had experience. James could tell from the look in his eyes that he's been through so much in his time working there. He introduced himself to David with a firm handshake. David seemed polite despite his desire to explain James's job and move on. They walked down a disgusting and dank hallway with cells lined against every wall. Screams echo throughout the corridors. This was no place for a new father, or what else could James do? "I know you're new here," David said, with a serious tone to his voice, "but I like to show all the newbies our most damaged patient, to be completely transparent about the horrors you may experience while working here." James becomes more and more nervous the further they walk, but he collects himself and nods towards David. They arrive at a scratched-up door. It was more beaten up than any other door in the asylum, as if they were trying to keep in a monster who didn't want to be there. On the door was a word and a number. Room 87. David turns to James and says, "Prepare yourself for what you're about to see. We don't know his identity. The staff have always had one name for him." "What?" replies James timidly. "The devil." David opens the door until the whole room became visible, lit only by what little light shone through the hallway. In the room, James could only make out a hospital bed with an IV drip next to it and one man laying down on the bed. But as he got closer to better see the man, James realised that it might not even be the right word to describe it. This was no man. This was a monster. The thing had clearly been burnt to a crisp, to the point where all that was left was a red, fleshy skeleton with no eyes and a sunken-in nose. There were robotic parts all over his body, to the point where James couldn't even tell where the skeleton ended and the robot began. He almost retched at the sight of it. "This thing! It shouldn't even exist!" James was trying to desperately keep the bile building up in his mouth down just to say what he needed to say. It's not even human! Why haven't you tried to kill it?" "We did," David answered, "but it doesn't stay dead for long. We can't explain it, but there is something, or someone, keeping him alive." James moves closer and closer to the creature, cautiously. He thought it could sense every step he took, and so made sure to take only the smallest steps forward. All of a sudden, the skeletal head lifted and slowly turned to look at James. The thing cried out, "I don't recognize you. You are new here." No one knew the thing could speak, or how it could even do it. Having reached his limit, James screamed and ran out of the room, with David following behind him. "No, please, don't leave me," the creature exclaimed. "Please, don't leave me in here with him." "Hello, Afton." A deep, booming voice was heard in the darkness. "I wouldn't bother shouting. They're not coming back." Having been identified by the mysterious voice, Afton turns to face it, only to see two pinpricks of light shining through the darkness. "Help!" Afton screamed. His fear of the voice proved to be stronger than James's fear of him. "What's wrong? Aren't you happy to see me?" He steps out from the darkness, revealing himself to be Fredbear, a yellow bear animatronic with a purple hat and tie. The appearance of Fredbear only made Afton's panic increase. "Do you know what today is?" he asked, knowing he wouldn't get a response. "It's the anniversary of when all this started, of when you took your first victim, of when you killed Charlie." The bear's rage is brought out by the name Charlie. His mocking facade drops and his true feelings towards Afton's crimes are revealed. "My, how time flies. Do you even remember what happened? It was so long ago." Fredbear pulls out a gift box from nowhere and places it in front of Afton. Don't worry. I brought you a gift. Seems appropriate. This box contains everything you've ever done. Every murder, every burning, everything you set in motion is here, and I'm going to give it all back to you. Afton begins hyperventilating, wheezing with every attempt to breathe in. You can't. Please, stop. He begs and pleads, but there is no stopping what's to come. It's too late now, Dad. Fredbear screams. Are you ready to take a trip down memory lane? A huge white light blinds everyone as moments from their lives flash over the screen. Room 87 quickly becomes an inferno of memories darting everywhere, burning into their eyes until the mystery unfolds. After hours of walking and pushing, James finally reaches the old robotics lab that had once belonged to Afton. Afton himself didn't have the strength to look up from his wheelchair and see the factory, but he knew they finally arrived. "Thank you," he says to James, sounding almost sincere. "It's no problem," James replies, as timid as ever. "Now, may I please go? I did what you asked. I have a wife and a newborn child that I can't leave on their own, so please, just let me go." Mustering the energy to turn around, Afton looks at James and nods. Having secured his freedom, he turns and runs away, leaving Afton to wheel himself into the building, never to turn and look back on him. As Afton edges closer and closer to the last thing he could ever consider to be a home, life begins to return to his eye sockets. If it was possible to smile, he would be doing it. However, before he could enter the building, an explosive is set off from the inside, and the whole factory erupts into a massive fireball. James turns back for a brief moment to see what had happened, but the explosion only made him more determined to leave, so he turned around and kept running until he could no longer be seen. Afton got caught in the blast, scattering pieces of his body all over the floor. It is unknown whether someone was trying to finish him off once and for all, or whether those explosives were planted there by Afton himself. But what is known is that James wasn't the only one who found his freedom that day. The figure watched the whole event transpire. Fredbear. He stands by the rubble and watches the building burn to the ground before saying his final words to Afton. "I guess you finally managed it. There's no bringing you back now. Maybe that's for the best. So long, Father." Fredbear turns away and walks off, disappearing into the ether. As the fire died down, something reached out its arm to save itself from the rubble. A ghostly figure in the shape of a rabbit, with golden fur and a purple vest and tie. Afton was not completely dead. "I am back. I will always come back," he cried in victory. "Now I am ready to make my return, and you're going to help me, whether you like it or not." He looks at a picture of an innocent girl named Vanessa, who works for Fazbear Entertainment's game development team. Having survived once again, he looks up into the sky as rain starts to fall from the heavens, laughing maniacally at his success.